We thank you, Father, for bringing us together again to study this wonderful book. And though we may be very confused and there's so many views, we ask that you will lead us to the right one. We ask that you will help us understand what is in store for us today, how we need to apply it, how we need to listen to you. We just ask that you will open our ears and our hearts right now to surrender to you, to be bold, to stay strong in you, to know that you are our God and that we are your children, we are your followers. Let everything that is said be true. Let there be no confusion, but order and peace and wisdom. In Jesus' name we ask this. Amen. Okay, today what we'll do is a quick recap before we dive into it. The 4 views of Revelation's timelines. Preterist, historicist, futurist, idealist. Okay, we won't get into the definitions of each of them today, not enough time. The 3 views of the Great Tribulation. What is the Great Tribulation? What is the Great Tribulation?
The end of suffering.
The time of great suffering. Okay, what are the 3 views? Pre-tribulation, mid-tribulation, post-tribulation. So pre-tribulation rapture, mid-tribulation rapture, post-tribulation rapture. The pre-tribulation rapture is that the church gets taken up into heaven before the Great Tribulation. The Great Tribulation. Why is this? Okay. This is pre-trib, that the church goes up to heaven before the big trouble starts. Mid-trib is in the middle of the great trouble, the church gets caught up into heaven. And this is post, that after the Great Tribulation, the church gets caught up into heaven. So these are the 3 views. Which one is right? God will reveal, hopefully, to us today somehow. but yeah. What are the things that we studied last week? The 3 sevens. 7 seals. There are 7 seals.
7 bowls, 7 trumpets.
Before the 7 bowls, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls. Okay? 7 seals, a letter, a scroll that has 7 seals, then 7 trumpets, and 7 bowls, which we haven't even gotten to yet. That will come much later. Okay? But so far, somewhere we are in the middle of this. Between the 6th, who opens the scroll?
The lamb.
The lamb is, who's the lamb? Jesus, yes. Is the lamb cute and cuddly?
Yes.
No. The lamb has 7 eyes and 7 horns, which is a symbol of power. It is not a symbol of timidity, it is a symbol of power. This is a strong, adult, not even a lamb, it's a ram with that much power and that many horns coming to unlock the future and unlock the scroll. Okay? So that's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Right. Between the 6th and 7th seals now, we catch a glimpse of 2 distinct kinds of people. Right? Now, when it comes to God's plan for his people, there seems to be 2 distinct kinds of people involved. One is us, the church. The other is the Jews, Israel, the descendants of Abraham. Right? God's promises to Abraham are everlasting. He came up to Abraham, this random dude, years back, and he gave them a promise that his descendants will always be there, and they will be as numerous as the stars in the sky and the grains of sand in the seashore. And even in the letter to the Romans, Paul makes it a point to go on for a couple of chapters that God is not done with the Jews. He has a plan for them. Okay? So in Revelation, it seems that we encounter these 2 groups of people. We suddenly see the church where Jesus is writing 7 letters to them and things like that. Suddenly we see 144,000 people. Okay? We see 144,000, which seems to be a limited number. It doesn't seem to be contrasted to, again, if you've read it, you know, right after that, we read about multitudes of people. 144,000, multitudes. So the 144,000 seems limited compared to the innumerous believers. Okay? 144 seems, and it seems, how do we come to the conclusion that these are probably Jews? This is the Jewish people. Because the tribes are mentioned. It says 12,000 from different tribes of Israel. So it says there's 144,000 people there. 12 tribes of Israel into 12,000 from each tribe. Okay? Now the tribes of Israel, starting with the eldest son Reuben, then Simeon, Levi, Judah, and so on, all the way down to Joseph and then Benjamin. Okay, those were the 12 sons of Jacob. Jacob's name was changed to Israel. Okay, the 12 tribes come from these 12 sons. Now what happens is Joseph, who was Jacob's favorite son, Never have favorite sons, apparently. It leads to a lot of trouble. But either way, Joseph, who was Jacob's favorite son, had two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. And when the time came for Jacob to die, when he was dying, he decided to give his final blessing to all his children. And he found Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and he told Joseph, my son, these are not my grandchildren. These are not going to be counted as my grandchildren. They are not going to be counted as your sons. They're going to be counted as my sons. And so when the property is divided, it's not that it's not that Joseph gets 1/12 of the property and that gets divided further on to Manasseh and Ephraim. It is that Ephraim and Manasseh is counted as Jacob's sons themselves. So they get 1/13 of the property. So now if you split Joseph into two, how many sons do 12 sons become? Ignore Joseph. You're not counting Joseph. You're splitting Joseph into two. So you have 13 tribes, right? So you have 13 tribes. Now the thing is, when they entered the promised land, God said the tribe of Levi is not going to get any land because I am setting them apart as priestly duties. So no land for them, no fighting in the army for them. Okay? So if you leave the tribe of Levi out, you get how much? 12. Correct? So this is one way to count the tribes of Israel. 12. Taking the 13 and minusing Levi. But if you want to count Levi also and you still want to end up with 12, what do? You put Ephraim plus Manasseh equals Joseph. And you still get 12. So every time in the Bible you will read 12 tribes of Israel, you will notice one tribe is missing. Either Ephraim and Manasseh are counted as Joseph, or the tribe of Levi is left out and Ephraim and Manasseh is counted as separate. Is that clear? Yeah. So that's why there are 12 tribes of Israel. This particular chapter has a big problem because they count Manasseh, they don't count Ephraim, they put Joseph, and so this is a weird combination. They leave another tribe out, the tribe of Dan. Okay, and that's very strange because Dan seems to be a strange tribe to leave out. One of the closest explanations that people have come up to by just guessing, I'm not sure, but Dan is the tribe in the book of Judges through which idolatry enters the land of Israel. Dan is the tribe that leads to idolatry in the land. In fact, when Jacob prophesies, Dan's father prophesies over Dan, I think he in fact says Dan is a serpent or something like that. You know, so that seems to be something that the tribe of Dan did that led to his exclusion. The same way the other tribe that led to a lot of idolatry is the tribe of Ephraim. And so somehow, obviously Joseph means Ephraim, right? Because if Manasseh is mentioned, Joseph minus Manasseh is what? Ephraim. But yet his name is not mentioned. And so it seems like for some reason their names are not mentioned. Most probably because they were the ones who led to idolatry in the land of Israel. Okay? But here it seems like Dan has been replaced from the Old Testament. Okay? 12 from the Old Testament, OT 12. Who are they? Tribes of Israel, correct? Who are the New Testament 12? The apostles. Right? Yeah. So Dan has been replaced from the Old Testament 12 just as Judas has been replaced and removed from the New Testament 12. Both of these are warnings that you cannot take your place in God's plans for granted. You may be counted as one of the 12 and yet you may choose to say goodbye. Before we started, Lydia was saying that Judas had communion with the rest of the 12 and it's what you do with it that matters. Judas decided to be replaced and do his own thing and so did Dan apparently. And both these are warnings for us. Okay, but right after this you see an uncountable number of believers and these believers join the elders and living creatures in praising the King and they add something to their praise. They say they praise God for their salvation. And then John is very confused about who they are and he asks who are they, and one of the elders says, these are the ones who are coming out of the great tribulation. And it seems these are coming out of it. Okay, they're still there in the great tribulation but they're coming out of it. The way it's written, it seems to be that they're coming out one by one through death and martyrdom. I'm going to have to confuse you all further because I want you all to join me in my confusion. One of the, how many of you have heard of Corrie ten Boom? Corrie ten Boom, great Dutch woman who was taken to the Nazi concentration camp, was tortured there. Her sister died under torture. She came out, she wrote books, she decided to forgive all her enemies. She said those who learned to forgive were able to move on and love God. Those who couldn't forgive suffered a lot. You know, her whole thing is about forgiveness, and amazing woman. And she went as a missionary or preacher to China, where the underground church is. And when she was there, she noticed that the church was discouraged. Okay, and she said, and she asked, "What's going on?" And the church told her, "Corrie ten Boom, for years, white missionaries from the West have come to us, and they have preached to us, and they have said, before the great trouble occurs, the church will be raptured." Okay, all these people were clearly pre-tribulational view, and they said, before the great trouble occurs, we will be raptured. And then they told Corrie ten Boom, the great trouble came to us, and we were not prepared, and we didn't know what to do. And Corrie ten Boom said, it is going to be my life's duty to prepare the church for suffering. Okay? So that's one point for the post-tribs. But of course, the pre-tribs will say that the church has to go through trouble, great trouble. It's not just not going to be the great trouble. And before the great, great, great trouble happens, we'll be raptured. Okay? So you either choose Corrie ten Boom or you choose others. But again, we all get to pray about it together and figure out. Know that you are going to suffer. That was the point of Revelation, remember? Don't be surprised. James writes, do not be surprised by the trials and tribulations that you're going through, as if something strange were happening to you. Jesus said, rejoice in your sufferings. Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble. I read somewhere, and I'm not saying this is what we need to do, and I'm not sure if this comes under the preparation, but I read from this book where this Chinese guy in the Chinese church, one of the trainings they go through is not just theology, but how to break your handcuffs and run from the police so that you can go back to your church. And of course, I'm not advocating that. But here's the other scary thing that I heard about the Chinese church. One of the trainings that they go through is how do you preach to your executioner while you're on your way to your execution? So that's how you prepare, apparently. Anyway, it's not the blood of the martyrs that's saving them. It's the Lamb's blood that has saved them. Right? But God still sees their suffering, and He says that they will never ever experience pain again. And He says, no more scorching sun, but they will have refreshing water, and every tear from their eyes will be wiped away. I think that's an amazing promise, because for some reason, I can only imagine myself crying in the presence of God, at His beauty also. And I can imagine God coming, looking at us, cry at His beauty and still wiping those tears also away. Painful tears, yes. Joyful tears, yes. But He's there. And you can feel His hands go. I mean, clearly I've not had tears wiped away. I don't know how you wipe away tears, but you know. But you know, how you want to. But what a promise. Right? Now I'm going to explain the pre-trib view. You've got to forgive me, but I have to do it because, again, join me in my confusion. Pre-trib view is that the 144,000 are the Jews, of course. They're Jewish evangelists. Remember, the pre-trib view is that the church is no longer on the earth. The church has been taken to heaven. But 144,000 are Jewish evangelists, and from their evangelism, this multitude of believers are going to come on the earth. And they will suffer for their faith, and they will die, and they will come out of the great tribulation by suffering through death. Okay? In the pre-trib view, no Gentile Christians left. We are watching from the sea of glass. What's happening? In the post-trib view, it seems to be two distinct groups, Jewish Israel and Gentile Christians. For pre-trib, okay, according to the pre-trib view, time is going on, 2024. We come here, suddenly great tribulation starts. Okay? And us, the church today, gets caught up into heaven. So right now, who's on the earth? Jews and unbelievers. Yeah. So there's 144,000, which could also just be symbolic of a great number, but limited number. Jews are on the earth. Yeah, they're not part of Jews. Yeah, but they will come to believe. This group will come to believe. Will see that Jesus is their Messiah, and they will decide to tell the whole world about it. Is that clear? Yeah. That's the pre-tribulational view. Right? Can I move on to chapters 10 and 11? Okay, chapters 10 and 11. We hear of two witnesses, we just read it, who appear in Jerusalem, and they will start preaching and prophesying. Before that, John is told to measure the courts, right? He's told to measure the temple. But he's told, don't measure the outermost part. Okay? So here's what you need to, because it's going to be left to be trampled upon. Now, here's what you need to know about the Temple of Jerusalem. There was an inner area where the Jews could enter and worship and whatever they wanted to do. The outer court was where Gentiles who were interested in the religion of Judaism, proselytes, people who wanted to be Jews but weren't born Jewish, but still wanted to worship Yahweh, they could only come to the outer court. And they would come to the outer court and they would worship God. Now, here's what the Jews did. They converted this outer court into a market. That's where animals were sold for the sacrifices. While people like us, at that time, maybe pre-Jesus, would want to know about Yahweh and go there to worship, we would see somebody shout out, 1 goat for 10 rupees, or whatever you want to rate a goat, But those were the noises you would have to fight against while trying to pray. And obviously that was a big no-no for Jesus. And he took a whip and whipped them all out and said, get out, you've turned my father's house into a marketplace. Because it was so serious to Jesus, because these were Gentile believers who didn't have the full grasp of the law yet, and they wanted to know. They were hungry for God. And they wanted to know God. And the Jews had converted this place into a marketplace. But either way, this is what is meant by the outer courts. Only the Jews could enter the inner courts, okay? But here we see that the temple is being measured and it is being guarded. If the outer court is being trampled on, it's clear that the inner court is not being trampled on. And so it seems to be guarded. What could this refer to, this temple being guarded? It might just be referring to these, Jewish Israel, being guarded for a time. Okay? It could be the Jews being protected for that time. I'll tell you why we come to that conclusion, but from the trampling of whatever's trampling is happening outside. We're not sure. Yes, we're not sure. Protected how? If you ask me protected how, I'll give you 2 examples of what protected how can look like. And if you're confused, just ignore that I've said this, okay? You probably need to read these books before you get into it. Exodus, when the 10 plagues came, none of the plagues hit Israel. They were protected. The flood, when the flood came, Noah and his family were protected. But the flood was still there, around them. It just didn't affect them, because obviously they did something that they followed God's instruction, okay? So that's how they might be protected, something that they may know that will protect them. So that's what's happening in the inner court. The outer court is not being protected, so the multitude of Gentiles, even believing Gentiles, are going to be trampled on. And during this time, 2 witnesses will come and they will be given power to perform miracles, like stopping the rain. For those of you all who know, who should that remind you of? Elijah, Old Testament prophet, he stopped the rain. He said, rain stop, and the rain stopped. Any idea how long the rain stopped for? 3.5 years. Okay, now here's the question. How many years are these 2 witnesses going to be there for? 3.5 years. It says 42 months right there. 42 months. That is 3.5 years. So many speculate that this could be Elijah and Moses, the 2 people Jesus met on the Mount of Transfiguration. Moses represents the law, Elijah represents the prophets, so both could represent the law and the prophets. It could also be symbolic of law and prophets coming together and doing things. Also, Elijah, things that support this view, by the way, Elijah didn't really die. You all know that, right? I mean, if you all don't know, I'm telling you. Elijah didn't really die. He was taken up to heaven on a chariot. His body was taken up into heaven. Moses, though he died, do you remember in the book of Jude, Satan and Michael fought for Moses' body? One possible explanation is that the body is necessary for revelation to take place. Okay, but that's again, just scholars trying to give explanations. Others speculate that this could be Elijah and the prophet Enoch, because Enoch also didn't die. He was taken up into heaven. The other explanation is that these 2 could be people we haven't even heard of before, who may just be a symbol of the law and prophets. It could be even 2 groups of people that are represented as 2 people. See, for example, the people said before the Messiah came, Elijah would come. That was the Jewish belief. Jesus said that's John the Baptist. Correct? Yeah, if you didn't know that, that's what happened. The Jews were expecting 2 people to come. Someone who paved the way for the Messiah and the Messiah. And so they expected Elijah and the Messiah. Who came? Some random dude in the desert named John. We think he's great because we read the Bible today. To them, it was some stranger. Who came after John? Some random carpenter from Nazareth named Yeshua. Who may come in the future? Correct. But yeah, that's... See, also at the same time, I know we're confused about a lot of things here, but I also need to say this. Revelation has been studied for, 2,000 plus years, right? And there's a lot to do with the Jews and Israel or whatever. But you've got to realize the whole view of Revelation probably shifted once Israel was refounded as a state. That was a whole new thing in whatever God's historic timeline. And that changed the view of Revelation suddenly from all angles. And scholars suddenly got back into it. Oh no, this is new Revelation and whatever. We have no idea what God is, how God is setting the chess pieces yet, and what else is going to be revealed when it comes to politics and armies and diseases and this and that. Right? But when their testimony is concluded, the 2 witnesses, they will be killed. Killed by who?
Beast.
The beast. Who's the beast? We have no idea yet. John hasn't even started writing about the beast. He just says the beast will come out of the abyss and kill. And it's just so confusing even to John probably. And that comes in later chapters. So the timeline here is obviously mixed up. But their bodies will be on the streets for 3 days. And this will be international news apparently, because the whole world will celebrate their deaths. And the whole world will declare it as a holiday. It'll be like Christmas, because it says they will give each other gifts. And it'll be like Easter and Christmas and whatnot. The death of two of God's people. And everyone in the world will know. I mean, obviously when John wrote this, I don't know how he would have imagined this, but today it's easy for us to figure, right? One tweet, one Instagram post, and the whole world knows. I have no idea what John saw, but in the future, who knows what technology will be. Maybe some Neuralink thought and we'll all get to know. But and all the people who were tormented, and let me just rephrase that in today's language, felt judged by the two witnesses will celebrate their deaths. Okay, so it may be hard for us to imagine that the world will celebrate the death of two godly people, correct? But let me ask you this, okay? And I know this is going to be controversial, so you've got to forgive me and don't hold this against me at all. Is it hard today to make the world hate Israel? Whether they're at fault or not. Is it hard today for any kind of news to make us all come together and hate one particular person? I think, I know this isn't really about the two witnesses, but yesterday I read a thread that said, people of course today are going around saying that the beast is Elon Musk and all that kind of nonsense, okay? Obama, Trump, Elon Musk, everything. But this guy's thread really blew my mind. He said, Elon Musk is not going to be the beast, because the beast is going to be somebody that everyone loves. There is a higher chance of Mr. Beast. You all know who Mr. Beast is? Guy who does amazing charitable work. There is a higher chance of Mr. Beast being the beast than Elon Musk, because it's going to be someone who the world will be willing to follow and give their allegiance to. Not saying Mr. Beast is the beast at all. Good guy for now, okay? A lot of people don't like Elon Musk. Okay? Now, these two witnesses will be someone who will be God, who will be two people who will be God's chosen people, and it'll be so easy for the whole world to hate them and celebrate their deaths. They'll be counted as terrorists. But it's amazing how similar their fate is to Jesus' fate. You saw that? They die and then they rise up in 3 days, and then they ascend. And they're told to come up here. And I think when this happens, the whole world will look and will obviously think of Jesus' death and resurrection. And it says there 42 months, correct? 42 months is equal to 1,260 days, is equal to 3.5 years. All these three are mentioned in different places in Revelation. They all mean the same time. Okay, just a little context here. In the book of the prophet Daniel prophesies that there will be he prophesies about 77s or 70 years or 70 weeks or whatever. Translations are different. It says weeks or sevens or whatever. But he prophesies about 1 7. Okay, 1 7, which may refer to 7 years. Okay, 1 7, which may refer to 7 years. And in the middle of that 7, it says, the abomination of desolation will be set up in the temple. Some translations say the great horror will be set up in the temple. If you haven't, anyone who hasn't heard of that term before at all, abomination of desolation, no shame at all. All right, okay, cool. Jesus spoke about the abomination of desolation in, I think, Matthew's gospel. Daniel spoke about it. It was predicted by Daniel and Jesus. It referred to something that some really bad, shady character will do. Like the man of lawlessness, or the Antichrist, or whatever you want to call him, would come and do something really bad in the Holy of Holies. Would set up an abomination, like an idol, or do something bad in the Holy of Holies. Okay, so Jesus spoke about it being a sign of the end times. Daniel said it will happen in the middle of the great 7. Okay, so this is where one of the mid-trib views come in, that in the middle of that, when the abomination of desolation is set up, bye-bye church. But I don't think we need to dwell on that too much. Okay, so Daniel spoke about abomination. Jesus spoke about abomination being a sign of the last days. A few years after Daniel prophesied this, there was a ruler named Antiochus Epiphanes who came and did disgusting things in the temple. He sacrificed a pig on the altar. He set up an idol of Zeus in the Holy of Holies. And so people saw that as an abomination of desolation. And Antiochus Epiphanes was definitely a picture of the Antichrist. A few years after Jesus rose from the dead and ascended, the Roman emperor, I think it was the Roman emperor Caligula, okay, I need to check this. He wanted a statue of himself erected in the Holy of Holies. And I think while the statue was on the way, he died or something like that, but people saw that also as an abomination of desolation. The pattern still continues. And so when this happens, I think something's going to happen in the Holy of Holies in the temple, I don't know, but which tells us that the temple may be rebuilt, okay? Notice this, in the middle of the 7, how much is middle of 7? 3.5. That's why we get 3.5. So it seems that the two witnesses are coming for 3.5 years. They're prophesying for 3.5 years. They're being killed after 3.5 years. Then this beast is coming and killing the two witnesses. And after 3.5 years, in the middle of the 7, abomination of desolation. And then things are going to go crazy. Okay. Shall we move on to the woman?
Yeah, who's
Yeah?
this woman?
A great sign appeared in heaven, and John sees a woman.
Yeah.
John sees a woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. There was also a great red dragon, 7 heads, 10 horns. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky. Any doubt on who the dragon is?
Satan.
Correct. No room for interpretation there. John clearly tells us himself. This is Satan. This is the devil. Who are the stars? What are the stars his tail swept? Angels. Stars are angels in Revelation, and so he's sweeping off a third of heaven's angels down. Right? And so these are fallen angels. Good news is Satan only takes a third, so the good side is still majority. Doesn't matter, God is enough, even if he's not majority, whatever, but you know what I mean. Notice that it's not even God or Jesus who fights Satan. It says Michael was sent to fight Satan. Right? So there's really no comparison there. The woman is pregnant, gives birth to a son, a male child, who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter, and her child was snatched up to God and to his throne. Who's the woman now? Let's dive into that. There are 3 major views. Okay? One view is that this woman is the Blessed Mary, mother of Jesus. What supports this view? She literally gave birth to a male child who will rule the nations with an iron scepter. That rule the nations with an iron scepter is from Psalm 2. It's a messianic prophecy that the Messiah would come and rule the nations with an iron scepter. And so the child being Jesus fits. The dragon tries to attack the child as soon as he's born. This could refer to the time when Herod was trying to kill all the babies in Bethlehem in order to kill. If you don't know these stories, please raise your hand and we'll get into those stories. Okay, but Herod tried killing Jesus. So that's one view. Second view is that this woman is the church. Okay? And the child is not Jesus, but the child is martyred believers. And so the church is giving birth to new believers, and the dragon is trying to kill them, and they're being snatched up or killed and going to heaven. Okay? So that's one view. Who will rule all the nations with the iron scepter? In Revelation 2, Jesus writing to a church says, to those who overcome, they will rule with an iron scepter. So it is Jesus, of course, but Revelation 2 says that the church will also do it. And so the church could be believers. So that's view number 2, church giving birth to believers. Third explanation, and this kind of is a lot more fitting things. Of course, there are issues with this also. For those of you, how many of you have read Genesis through and through? Sun, moon, 12 stars. What should that remind you of? Genesis. The dream. Joseph has a dream in which he sees the sun, the moon, and 12 stars bowing down to him. And this woman is clothed with sun, moon, and 12 stars. Who could it be a symbol of? Israel. This is Jacob's offsprings. This is Israel. Okay, so the woman could be Israel. Israel gave birth to a child. Who is that child? Jesus. Jesus is Israel in the flesh. But at the same time, it could also be a representation of the church. Out of Israel came the church through Jesus. Okay? The child is snatched up. Jesus ascended, yes. What could snatched up also mean? Rapture. So this is a pre-trib view. That as soon as the child is born, it is before the devil could devour this child, the church, it is snatched up. It is snatched up. And of course, if you hold the position of pre-tribulation rapture, then this snatching up makes sense. The woman fled into the wilderness where she was protected. How long was she protected for according to the verse? Time, times, and half a time. What does time, times, and half a time mean? Time means 1, times means 2, half a time means 0.5. What does that mean? 3.5 years. So again, 3.5 years. The woman flees into the wilderness and she's protected for 3.5 years. If the woman is protected for 3.5 years, and if the woman is protected for 3.5 years, who is the woman? Israel, the Jews. We did this. You saw that in the temple, the inner court. 3.5 years. It was measured. So the woman is being kept safe. So this chapter seems to be the same as the 2 witnesses chapter. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's a view. It's a view. I'm not saying it's the view. Woman in the wilderness being protected. Their church, the temple. John measured the temple and he did not measure the outer court. What's happening in the outer court? The Gentiles, the outer court of the Gentiles is being trampled upon. Okay, who is not trampled on? The temple, the Jews. They are protected for how long? 3.5 years. Okay, woman is being protected, and then war breaks out. What does the dragon do then? Go after the rest of her offspring. So who should the rest of her offspring be now? The Gentile, the outer court. Yeah, the outer court being trampled on. And so the outer court being trampled on is probably represented by the dragon going after the rest of her offspring while the woman is being protected. And then war breaks out between Satan and Michael. The archangel Michael is a mighty soldier angel, by the way, powerful angel. Dragon is hurled down. Now he's super angry, tries going after the woman, fails because she's protected, goes after the rest of her offspring. Does all this fit? I think it kind of fits. Are there issues with this view? I think there are 100 issues with this view. Won't go into them. We just need to pray and struggle with it together. Okay? There's a famous verse in this chapter that many people tend to quote because it's a part of songs also. Okay? It goes like this. We will overcome by, any answers? By the blood of the Lamb and the word of his testimony. Okay, so I want us all to say that together. We will overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of the testimony. All right, great job, great job. We just learned what all the people who sing without meaning to sing actually sing. There is a second part of this verse that we tend to forget, that we tend to ignore. It says, they triumphed by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of their testimony. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. That's how we overcome. That's how we triumph. Blood of the Lamb, washed by his blood, word of his testimony, we give his testimony, and then suffering will come if we do that. But we don't shrink from death. We do not love our lives as much as to shrink from death. That's how we become overcomers. We thank you, Holy Father, for all that we got to go through today. We ask that if there's anything that has been said or believed or heard that is not true, that you will blot it out of our minds immediately. But the things that are true, that you will really plant it in our hearts and it will bear fruit. We ask that you will bless us, even as we do these questions right now, that we will magnify your name and that your name will be glorified. Come, Holy Spirit, we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey there, thank you so much for watching this video and we hope you were blessed by it. It would mean so much to us if you liked this video and subscribe to our channel and also share this link with your friends. God bless you.